Morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar presented to you in tandem by the Ontario General Contractors Association, Innovation Committee, and Aon to discuss construction technology and risk, a data-driven strategy to implementing technology. I'm Jim Blair, Director of Business Development at Collaborative Structures Limited, but coming to you today in the capacity of Committee Chair of the OGCA's Innovation Committee. For the longest time, our industry, development of construction-based technology remains stagnant, and perhaps more so, the implementation of a wide range of technologies geared to the construction improvements such as safety practices, increased work efficiencies, ergonomic analyses to improve work smart initiatives, and just basic research for the new and better means of delivering our core business. Well, the industry is stagnant no longer and is now one of the fastest growing adopters of technology in the world. With OGCA being the leading edge of industry trends for general contractors and in the industry at large, the Innovation Committee was developed in 2019 with the mandate of being responsible for dissemination of information to members of the OGCA on issues pertaining to introductions of new technology and industry innovation on the whole. While the committee began on this trajectory, we found ourselves incredibly aligned on the path with Aon and their technology leadership group. Aon being the global leader that they are in risk mitigation and technology solutions, as well as being an associate partner of the OGCA and a leading innovation committee contributor, we were able to get insights and begin participation in their technology assessment panel, of which will be presented to you in a few minutes. This morning, I'm pleased to host this webinar and be joined by three tireless leaders in the technology and data innovation for the mitigation of risk in the construction marketplace. First panelist is Greene, Aon's Assistant Vice President, National Practice Group for Data and Analytics. And Chris is also the powerhouse behind the development and delivery of Aon's tech assessment panels. Leading the charge on the TAC with Chris is Sean Hoare, currently serving as Manager and Senior Vice President of Construction Services Group in Ontario. And then leading out the panel is David Bowcott, Global Director of Growth, Innovation, and Insight of Aon's Global Construction and Innovation Group. With his mandate to fuel global growth for Aon, David has been given jurisdiction over generating strategies and practice for risk mitigation to Aon's clients by way of innovation and technology. I welcome you, gentlemen, to the panel.
Thanks, Jim.
So let's get down to it. What are we really doing here this morning? Whether you're in the construction industry, insurance industry, servicing the construction market, a design professional, or any other contributing industry to building construction, we are all aligned on one thing, and that's how to mitigate risk and mitigate the amount of risk that we assume in our inherently risky nature of our business, construction. While the construction industry is transforming and accepting of new technologies, so is the way we look at insurance and the finance underwriting industry that it serves. I'm sure that all of you on this session this morning are seeing the rising costs of insurances on your projects, an increased number of guarantees that accompany policies. While using their extensive collection of construction and built environment loss data, Aon is leading the industry in assessing technology-based solutions to mitigate loss. So pay attention, as I promise you that this will be the first webinar you've seen that shares how technological-based construction technology solutions can also save you money and reduce your job site risks and potentially your premiums. I remind all of you that this is an interactive webinar, so please feel free to send in your questions at any time during the presentation to the chat bar, and I'll cycle them through the panel. With that, Chris, Sean, Dave, why don't you guys take us through your initiatives with the tech assessment panel and how these efforts are starting to transform and shape the insurance industry for construction.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Just a bit before we get into going through the tech assessment panel, I wanted to emphasize something Jim brought up. We've been following technology as a risk control for the past 10 years, and I think you have to give some perspective to the context of this discussion. We all come from the insurance industry, and as you know, the insurance industry writes these policies, and Chris is going to talk about a few of them. And ultimately, we have a lot of data basically around what's gone wrong, and so we had two things that came together that really made us kind of say, hey, we should really put something together that we can help our clients find out which technology is having the greatest impact. one thing, we had all this data that said, hey, this is where the problems are. And then the other thing is the clients kept coming to us and saying, geez, there's so much technology out there. How do I find a way through it all to find out what's ideal for my job site or my company? So I just wanted to, give you a bit of background on that. And as you mentioned, we were combining with Willis Towers Watson, which will make us one of the largest repository of this type of failure data. And obviously, the more we harness that data, the better we can see what's going wrong. And then hopefully we can attach it to solutions that prevent or mitigate those things from going wrong. So hopefully that context, is helpful. What I'll do is I'll hand it over to Chris right now, and he's going to walk you through the genesis of the technology assessment panel. And then I'll jump back in, and obviously then we'll get into some questions where Sean and everybody will participate. Great.
Great. Thanks, David, and thanks, Jim. The OGCA has definitely been a huge help to us as we kind of walk down this journey. And Jim's right, we kind of do share the same vision as far as digitizing the construction environment and helping our clients kind of navigate the ways around that. So before I get started, I just wanted to share a story. So David and I were chatting, how long have we been doing this for? And as you said, like for the past 10 years, like he's been thinking about this stuff and, digitizing the environment and changing things for good. But I dug up an old document that we had a few years ago, and I found that, it was our first iteration of the technology assessment panel, or a version of it. And it was essentially like a Word document that we did our research on a few companies, and we just found competitors there, and we said, okay, it was like a color-coded system, so green, yellow, and red, and it's grown tremendously from there. The tech assessment panel now is made up of professionals all across North America. We have data scientists involved, actuaries, risk engineers, brokers, and construction professionals. So it really has kind of found its footing, and we've done, I think, a lot to kind of push forward the boundaries of what's possible in the industry here. So I'll get started here. Won't take up too much of your time, so we can get into some discussion. But as we kind of see here, as David mentioned, we collect a ton of failure data, right? So obviously we're an insurance broker, and the buckets here represent our policies, and the rain represents the risk falling down into those policies that we collect through the claims payments. So we know exactly kind of what's going wrong with our clients. We know the pain points, and we know through all of these different policies where the issues are coming from, right? So there are some obviously that are insured and preventable, and there are some that aren't. But you can see here are the examples. Okay, we're starting to really do a deep dive into the claims and root cause of loss for a lot of this stuff. So we're just scraping the top surface right now. And it's kind of like digging for gold, right? There's a ton of data out there. We have a lot of clients to kind of build this out with, but it's never been done before. And I think we're in a unique position to really do this, not in such silos, but like across the whole industry and across the world, really. So we really have a good vision into all of the problems or failure that we're seeing. So, and that was kind of the inception of the technology assessment panel, because we know the problems, and our clients are asking us, okay, they have 100 customers or tech companies coming at their door knocking and saying, okay, we can help you with this, we can help you with that, but they really had no way of vetting them. And that's why we set up the tech assessment panel, so we can actually go ahead and vet those companies and actually say, okay, you are actually impacting the biggest claims that we're seeing in the industry. Some companies might not have all of the claims issues, but maybe eventually they will, and we want to kind of eliminate that as much as we can. So our job in the top is to associate the problems with and match them with the solutions, right? So you can see some of the companies that we've worked with here, some of their logos. There are over 100 tech companies that we've assessed to date. There's always companies in the pipeline that kind of line up to present to us, and you'll actually see on our website, and I'll show you that in a sec, that we've done profiles on each one of these companies that we've vetted. And within these profiles, you can see here, We actually outline the risks associated with them and then the insurance policies that are impacted there. If you type in Technology Corner on Google, you'll see us come right up there, and you'll see all of the profiles that we've done to date. You can actually search by specific risks that are pain points for you. We're always happy to work with you, with your loss friends, to kind of say, okay, this is where your issues are coming from, and here's a tech stack that we think can kind of help you solve all those issues. So that's kind of where we went with the TAP, and it's kind of just been a growing initiative, and things are always changing, and we just want to keep pushing the boundaries of digitizing the environment here. So David, I'll hand it over to you just to talk about some of the conceptual parts of what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was a good introduction to our technology assessment panel, and it really, I mean, with that journey, Chris and I and several of the others that are involved in the panel started seeing some trends. And so what I'm going to do is quickly go through 4 insights or 4 trends that really are shaping the future of technology and construction. Number one, obviously, the technology that stands out is the cloud, the IoT, the Internet of Things, and machine learning and AI. And sorry for using the shortened versions of those, but I'll try my best to kind of spell out each one. And from that standpoint, if you look at it, really, the IoT devices are playing a key role in acting like nerves in the human body, and collecting that data and then bringing it together with machine learning and artificial intelligence is actually creating a level of awareness in the job site that is quite significant. And ultimately, we're moving into almost the predictive job site, and we're going to talk a bit about that in the discussion. And from our perspective, we're in the risk business. All of this, this combination of these technologies are really reducing risk. So that's one insight number one. So if we move on to insight number 2, ultimately, a lot of the technology companies out there, have a single solution. We call them point solutions. And they do help in specific areas. And what we've found is everybody's got their preference in each of the point solution categories. But when we look at it from a risk perspective, we actually realized that it's not just one single point solution that solves a problem. It's a combination of solutions that come together to create a risk control solution that totally suffocates the risk. So in this case, elemental risk, you can see the different technology categories that come together to really, crush that risk and eliminate it. Now you have to balance the cost of these technologies against the likelihood of the risk and the severity of the risk, but these are all things that you have to balance, and just the key to be aware of them. So that's insight number 2. We go to insight number 3. So, this is a really, really fascinating development that's happened really in the last year or year and a half. And PCL actually has come out with a Internet of Things backbone for the project. And I mean, ultimately, it's job site insights, and it's a company actually that's owned by Latium. And ultimately, what it does is it's taking the IoT devices and it's putting it on a backbone so that we can ultimately bring all these different point solutions in a bundled framework, right? And ultimately, basically reduce the overall risk on the project side. So from that standpoint, we're looking at partnering with a company like JSI and ultimately, bringing this to the marketplace and allowing clients to mix and match different IoT devices. So we see the IoT backbone playing a huge role in reducing the overall project risk. So if we can go into insight number 4. So what does this all mean for the insurance sector and even the project finance sector? Well, ultimately, the insurance sector would underwrite traditionally on data of the past. And going forward, we see through devices like, solutions like IoT backbones and various point solutions, we can see that, we're also getting data of the present and we're also getting data of the future. And ultimately, we call this edge underwriting, which means that the underwriters have the ability to actually see the data around what's going on and what could be going wrong in the future. And I think it's going to be very transformative to the insurance sector. And ultimately, we are doing our best to help work with insurers to bring that future to the present. So those are four of some of the key insights that we're seeing along the journey on our tech assessment panel. And hopefully those insights are helpful. And I guess now I'll just turn it back to Jim and we can kind of go into some questions.
That's awesome. Thanks, guys. So tell me, what are some of the biggest insights you've gained over the past several years in running the TAP? Having run TAP for over four years now, what are some of your favorites as well?
So I mean, some of my favorites are like actually they've kind of changed as we kind of learned what's out there, you know, as we've been doing this for the past few years. Initially, like we looked at things like digital twin technology, where, you know, you're constantly monitoring the job site visually and comparing that to schedules. You can see how things are progressing. You can see if there's defects arising. But I mean, one of the cool things about that is you can actually implement augmented reality. So I can put on, you know, some augmented reality or virtual reality goggles. I can just in my room here, take a look and go for a walk, you know, in a building virtually and seeing how things are progressing, seeing how, okay, maybe we need to change this or change that. And it kind of brings in design to the real world implementation with a backdrop that's kind of safe for you to kind of play around with. Other things are texts that, you know, that change the way that we make decisions. So, you know, there's companies like Alice Technologies out there, like Nixon and Plan. They kind of change the way that they tell us the best way to move forward with things based on our own, you know, decision-making capabilities. So if we start recording data across the board and learning how our decisions are, you know, affecting the schedules, how our decisions are affecting cost, things like that, then we can kind of learn, okay, what is the best practice to move forward with? And in order to do that, we need some of these techs to just collect the data moving forward and tell us, you know, this is wrong or this is right, or this is the best way to kind of move forward. And that really changes the mindset of how we see everything from design to construction to ownership.
I mean, it's interesting because, you know, Chris talked about the digital twin, which is basically a lot of, you know, scanning of the as-built, right? And you can compare it to the BIM model if you're using a BIM model or the design or the schedule. And I think, you know, I mentioned with one of the insights is this whole concept of the IoT backbone. If you think about it, the digital twin is kind of like the skin of the as-built, and the IoT and machine learning is like the nerves, you know, so that you can actually see the job site and collect the data around, you know, environmental conditions and, you know, water issues and concrete curing and, you know, vibration, et cetera. So it gives you a full, you know, three-dimensional, four-dimensional view of the job site, which I think that's probably one of the most exciting aspects, is how all the technologies are converging into kind of a single framework for the project. And, you know, so that's obviously going to be a massive opportunity, I think, for the construction industry.
And I think we kind of get to the point where, you know, we as humans manage our own risk with our senses, right? We know when something's hot, we know when something's dangerous. So there's no reason why an asset should kind of operate the same way with technologies, and it'll know when something's going to go wrong.
Okay, so that sounds great from the insurance perspective. Tell me, what are the benefits or what are the advantages from an insurance premium standpoint for a general contractor to start adopting these technologies?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been talking to the insurance companies about different technologies. Just to make it clear, we're an intermediary, we're a broker, right? So we go out there and we're pretty much the largest trading partner for every insurer globally. And we've been talking about the technology in the construction sector and the data strategies in the construction sector coming together to really mitigate risk. And there are insurers coming to the marketplace that are looking at bringing forward solutions that recognize that risk reduction. So there are a few companies, you know, XXL has created a technology ecosystem where there's subsidy for some of the technologies being used. The Hartford has done a lot of pilots around the technology, subsidizing them for the contractors on their projects that they're insuring. And you know, we've seen technologies like Eddy Solutions, which is a water mitigation technology, effectively getting better terms with different insurers in the marketplace, both in Canada and the United States, lower deductibles, you know, better rates, subsidy of the technology. And we're in the beginning stages of that. And as I mentioned, I think the actual way that insurers are underwriting is changing. It's actually, they have the chance to actually put together a prescribed menu of technologies that they can use to take care of the risks that they think are going to manifest on the job, right? So it's like, okay, if you think that's a big risk, here's a solution that's going to mitigate that risk. And so as they start getting their data, they get put into a position of proving what we call a mitigation delta, right? So ultimately, we're talking about what are the losses and the frequency and severity of those losses at the pre-technology stage, and then what are the losses? And Chris amazingly has a slide. He's pretty handy with the computer, as we can tell. Ultimately, this mitigation delta, as we start proving the mitigation delta with the various sources of data, it's only natural that the insurance industry and the project finance industry is going to say, hey, this is working. These combinations of technologies are preventing and mitigating key risks, or they're improving productivity, creating greater assurance that things will be done on time and on budget. And ultimately, it'll be recognized in the terms. So like I said, a lot of the insurers now are doing pilots, subsidizing, so that they can see the technologies being used. And then they're going through afterwards to look at the claims data to find out, did it actually work? And they're just basically trying to prove the mitigation delta. And as a broker, we're trying to aggregate our data to prove it on a grand scale by entering into partnerships like the one we're talking about with JSI.
So I'd say that one of the biggest challenges from a general contractor's perspective is probably just the sheer amount of technology that is out there right now. It's like we went from 0 to 1 million there in a matter of years. What is Aon's perspective or recommendation to general contractors as to maybe what type of technologies would be most beneficial for them to start looking at and investing in?
I mean, I know, and Chris, obviously you can add to this, and Sean, I think our thought process is the best place to start is to get an assessment of where you are with risks that you're manifesting. Just like we took the data that we see in our insurance policies and we said, okay, here are the top 10 risks that we see happening on the construction project as it relates to insurable risk, right? And we recommend contractors start developing a data strategy that allows them to capture their incidents and claims data so that they can find out, what are the big problems I'm facing? At that point, there are tools like the Aon Technology Corner where you can go and search by risks. So if you notice that you have a lot of water damage claims and you're in the residential high-rise business and you want to try and find a solution that's going to prevent and mitigate water damage risk, well, there's a whole category of technology, whether it's Eddy Solutions, Wint, multiple solutions, and then you can talk to these companies and find out why their solutions are better than the other guy's solution. And ultimately, that's the goal. So I would say from our perspective and what our data showing is definitely, the water damage side, there's a major, that's probably one of the pioneering technologies. Secondarily, I'd say that the defective workmanship technologies like environmental sensors, companies like Pillar, et cetera, that can measure humidity and temperature, and how that plays into good construction. And then obviously more so in the US than in Canada, the worker injury technologies, wearable technologies, and computer vision technologies. But then there's a whole category of schedule, assessment technologies. I mean, really, it's less about what are the ones that are the best. It's more about what are the ones that are best for you. And I think that's where, going back to try to get a sense of where your issues are within your company and then match those issues to the solutions in the marketplace. And Chris, I don't know.
Yeah,
Sean,
I mean, that definitely we'll start you off with the biggest impact for sure. And we're happy to kind of walk down that journey with you and figure out, okay, what are your pain points? What are the issues that you're having? And that's not to say that later on down the line, once you get into this, that you're not going to benefit from, okay, in the entire industry, contractors are having issues. That doesn't mean that you won't eventually have those same issues. But if you're set up foundationally to kind of start mitigating those now, then you're kind of protecting yourself in the future from risks that you might not even have had before. So it's it's just a journey, and it's something that you should get started on sooner rather than later. And if you think of it, you'll get a huge impact right now if you focus on your pain points, but then you also have to think about operationally, like indirectly, how much are you helping your company by not having that leak that shut down your site for however many days and affected your schedule. So it's going to affect your budget, your scheduling, everything, your branding, even, and just being like the best of the best, and having that that kind of trust within the industry to kind of say, okay, like this is what everything that we're doing to kind of prevent these things that make us an exceptional contractor. So it's kind of a journey to get down, but having that first hard-hitting impact is the best way to go, as David said.
I think also, sifting through the volume of technologies out there was really the impetus of why kind of Aon started the TAP process, and to a certain extent why the OGCA started looking at the technology committee, right? Is to kind of look at these technologies, refine them, and kind of determine how they can be most impactful for businesses out there, because there is so much. So, I mean, it starts with kind of, identifying those risk profiles, looking at the companies that can offer those solutions, and talking to them about what they can offer. These guys, I mean, these technology companies are very eager to gain traction in the marketplace, and they'll certainly be more than willing to talk to potential customers about what they can offer and how they can offer it.
Awesome. I think, and Harold Reinders has a fantastic question here. The large majority of the OGCA membership is small to medium-sized general contractors. So it's obvious that investing and leveraging these technologies on $500 million plus, as an example, type projects makes a lot of sense. Can you make some comment or recommendations as to or perhaps specifically what technologies general contractors can adopt for small or average size projects?
Yeah, I think bear in mind, some of these technologies, they get more expensive the bigger the job site, because there's more square footage, right? So if you're putting sensors throughout the job site, it's going to be more expensive. So it does kind of scale in reverse, right? So if you have a smaller job, you don't need as many sensors. And I think, going back to, the top technologies, whether it's a $40 million job or $850 million job that we're seeing is largely in the building space, right? I mean, there's some great stuff coming in the civil space. And so for your membership, it's obviously a very good category to look at. And so that's why you set up the Innovation Council. But I would say, without a doubt, the water damage is the pioneer technology coming to the marketplace. And the environmental monitoring and these are, you got to look at the pricing, and you got to look at the value you get out of the technology. But those are the two main categories that, because, the environmental technologies allow stuff, for instance, when a subcontractor maybe is saying, hey, it's not the right time to put the tiles down. Well, you can have a discussion, and he can quickly go and look at the site and say, you know what, the humidity is actually pretty good. So you can put the tiles down. And I'm sure as GCs, you've had some of the subs kind of say, hey, this isn't perfect for me. And maybe the reason that it isn't perfect isn't necessarily the humidity. There's something else going on. And that's something.
There's no subs on here, are there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the same time, there's self-perform. I mean, everybody's got a schedule to keep with multiple jobs, right? And I think the technology allows for that to kind of happen in a very transparent way. Hey, it is a good time to do it, and tell me the truth. What's really the problem here? I think is probably the discussion. I think weather technology can be pretty affordable too. Micro weather technology, and weather plays a big role. And we've even got a category where there's different construction techniques being used, or technologies being used, that prevent and mitigate the risk of weather. For instance, a company like Umbrella, who you may have seen, that kind of encloses the building so you don't have to be subject to weather. There's another company in the US called TGE, which is a top-down construction, which once again encloses the job site as the building is being built. And of course, we see the whole reemergence of manufactured or industrialized construction, where the part of the job is being done off-site, right? So I think it takes the weather out of the equation. Also helps with property damage risk and worker injury risk. We see, the worker injury category is pretty solid. I mean, obviously, it doesn't relate to private insurance. It's more your provincial insurance in Canada. The workers' compensation boards. But we see some pretty dramatic reductions in worker injury risk when certain technologies are used, and that data is coming to the market. We could go on all day, Chris. I know you've got a slide, and maybe you can pop that up, the one with the different categories of technology. And just to give people a sense, I'm not going to go through each one, but it gives people a sense of the different technologies that are in the marketplace. So, and these are just the names. For instance, on the subcontractor and supply chain side of things, you know, you've probably heard of Compass, Building Connected. They do a lot of counterparty risk assessment, but also in the supply chain, there's a company like TIV that actually monitors the goods as they're shipped from the manufacturing to the job site to make sure that the actual goods were shipped in good conditions, right? And they weren't bashed around, or they weren't subject to extreme temperatures or extreme weather conditions. You know, there's a company like Resilience 360 that tells you about supply chain issues, you know, like for instance, China, when, you know, the COVID-19 hit, you know, there was obviously a lot of issues with disruption in the Asian supply chain, and Resilience 360 was there to kind of monitor the choke points around that. You know, I've got two categories here for IoT Backbone. You know, or actually just there's an operational phase, and I mentioned in the construction phase, it's JSI. You know, that's obviously bringing together a lot of the point solutions under one roof, so that you can have a single pane of glass. But you know, a lot of these are just as applicable to the smaller projects. It just depends on who you're dealing with, and you know, you have to have a good idea of what you're trying to solve for, so that you don't have to overpay by getting too much of that technology, right? You just want to make sure that you're strategically putting the technology in the right place. But you know, as I mentioned, they scale backwards too, right? So if the job is small, the pricing is smaller in a lot of the cases.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, just kind of take a step back and think about, okay, what are the issues that I'm seeing here with my company and certain projects, and you know, how can I start slowly improving? And that'll kind of, and we're happy to go down that path with you as well, you know, and that'll kind of point your compass in the right direction to start. Okay, if I knew this about my construction site or my building, then I'd have better decision-making capabilities. So you may want to go down the path of starting with an IoT company. You know, if every project you have has a leak and that's setting you back, then, you know, start with some water sensors. There's small ways to kind of take it to the next phase and kind of grow. I think as you kind of make those small decisions, it'll help with your decision making to grow your company and to kind of, you know, go into those bigger kind of companies that help you holistically, you know, across your whole portfolio.
Okay, so the general contractor starts to adopt some of these technologies. Could we expect to see potential premium reduction more on a global scale of overall insurance premium, or is this more focused on a per project type of approach?
Yeah, I would say that the insurers are focusing first on the projects right now, but then obviously like your practice policies are almost like your second layer of protection against the project policies, right? If you think about it as a construction contractor. And so it'll bleed into all the policies. But I think that key point, we talked a bit about the mitigation delta, right? And I think as the insurers start proving the mitigation delta of different technology categories, you'll see that happening, and it's going to happen both at a project level and at a enterprise level, as well as all geographies. So, I mean, my role is global. You know, I came from our Canadian practice, but right now, before COVID, I was traveling around the world, basically meeting with design firms, contractors, and owners, and they're all watching this digital trend very closely. You know, some of our early stage results of a survey that we do every 2 years, which is our global risk management survey, are showing that digital is one of the biggest trends in the top 5 within the construction sector. So, you know, obviously that'll be published later this year. But yeah, it's global level. We expect that global insurers will start recognizing the value of these technologies, and you know, it'll be reflected in terms and conditions. It just makes natural sense. If they're more profitable, then you know, there's an opportunity for us to expand cover or change terms.
I think also everyone's seen what's happened in the insurance marketplace over the past 24 to kind of 36 months, even now, marked by, you know, a changing, call it hardening of the marketplace, marked by decreased capacity and increased rates, right? I think that insurance marketplace environment certainly can't last forever. I would love to be able to say that the end is in sight, and I think there is some movement kind of coming in the marketplace. But for organizations that are taking that hard focus on their risk profile and taking, firm and kind of tangible steps to improve it, are going to be the kinds of organizations that are front and center for markets as they emerge out of the hardening market and are looking to add business to their portfolios. And those kinds of organizations are going to be the ones that are, ideally front in line to get the improved pricing and to find themselves with, innovative insurers that are focused on these kinds of things and are taking them into account when they evaluate risk, price risk, and deploy their capacity.
It really is like a win-win-win solution across the board, because as a GC, you're getting better as a company. Insurance companies don't want to pay out claims. They want you to do well as well. And we're helping our clients in the meantime, just by improving efficiency and productivity. So it's almost like, everyone's going to rise up together and change the way that the industry is. And as we kind of get more digitized, it's like David said, it's a natural progression that we're kind of headed towards. And I think if you're not on board, then like you're going to get left behind.
And just a quick add on to Chris's point. I mean, Jim, your question was more, hey, how's it going to impact insurance? And I think one of the other areas is, as much as we're focusing on the mitigation delta as it relates to insurance, right? What does the insurance look like before the losses before the technology and after the technology? There's companies in the construction space and the technology space that are looking at productivity deltas, right? So they're like kind of saying, okay, what was my productivity before the technology and after the technology? So you really have to get good at, those two main categories, like risk reduction and productivity pickup. And so I think in the future, there's probably going to be solutions that'll rate these technologies around those two categories. So it'll make it that much easier for you to do a cost benefit analysis, and decide, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna pay for this tech because I know there's a massive risk reduction opportunity and a productivity pickup opportunity.
Those are good points, and I think it's important to note to the audience here that both the Innovation Committee and the TAP, the biggest benefit that our membership has here is to be able to tap into the sessions that you guys have already done, meeting with these tech companies, because the intent is that Aon is trying to poke holes into all of these companies that are trying to get front and center and in the eyes of the insurers. So they're doing all the legwork up front here to pitch and support who the best companies for risk mitigation are out there. So I do encourage all of you guys to connect with their tech corner and get involved with TAP.
Chris, does it make a little bit of sense now to talk about how we kind of tier the TAP participants and
I think
how
so.
we kind of prioritize them?
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, so we review TAP. It's almost like a Dragon's Den style kind of presentation where they present to us, to our panel. And, after that, we go back to the drawing board and we have an internal discussion and say, okay, what's really the impact that these guys are having on the claims and how well are they doing? Do they have the ability to scale globally? Do they have proper funding to be able to operate? We have a lot of different metrics that we kind of look at, and we kind of rate them from, okay, we're going to move forward with you and we're going to give you a profile. A lot of times we actually have a more meaningful kind of connection with them where we're starting to get them involved with some of our clients on projects right away because, it's a natural fit, and we're seeing that they can actually start having a huge impact immediately. So it's kind of a vast kind of array. And then there are companies out there that we've seen that, that aren't quite ready for the limelight yet. So we try to help them out. We tell them, you should kind of go in this direction because this is what we're seeing, but, it's kind of up to them. So.
And Jim,
polite way to put it. Chris, not ready for the
and Jim, I want to just kind of talk about OGCA. I mean, having you guys on those calls have been really helpful because you come on and there's been some contractors. Because honestly, we're just looking for people that have had experience to kind of help us poke holes. And like Chris said, we're mimicking the whole Dragon's Den, Shark Tank type of situation, talking about the tech, not because we're going to fund them, but because we want to know, hey, does this thing work? We all know that sometimes Silicon Valley and technology companies, kind of have this, reality distortion field where, what they're selling isn't really quite ready yet. And so we want to actually make sure we identify the ones that are really working so that our clients can obviously get a better assurance that it's going to have the effect on risk that they're hoping for.
And just to note, like, we are completely agnostic during this whole process. There are multiple companies that could be in the specific categories, say like elemental or water risk detection, that we're going to put everything out there and we're going to tell you that these are the options here, and it's up to you to kind of decide with our help what works best for you. So.
I just want to plug, in addition to the tech assessment panel, for those that are on the call that received the newsletter from the OGCA, to make sure that you're checking out the Innovation Corner section that is highlighted by the Innovation Committee of the OGCA. And a lot of the synergies that OGCA and Aon are working on together are featured there. So make sure you're checking that out in the newsletter. I've got another question here from the audience. It says that you mentioned that occupational health and safety is more of a provincial issue. However, we at the Ontario General Contractors Association, and as well as the League of Champions, it's a major focus of ours, if not the primary focus of ours. How important is occupational health and safety data to an insurance company such as Aon or broker? And what potentially are the impacts to premium and insurance rating in your eyes?
Yeah, and I think Sean can probably provide insight into whether insurers look at the workers' compensation, ratings and best practices of the insurers that we're working with. But I think it should play a key role. I mean, we all know the correlation between good safety practices and good profitability, and we believe there's a strong correlation between good safety practices and good risk management practices, right? So I think it should have a factor, in not only casualty insurance, so liability that's not necessarily worker injury, but also the property damage and all the other lines of cover that go into the construction sector. So from our end, it obviously should play a key role. But Sean, I don't know if you've got any insight into how much that data gets used by the insurers.
I think the short answer would be not a lot. Having said that, I think it's a very constructive thing to feature. I mean, if you have a very high rating with WSIB, and you're sending your workers home healthy and safe every day, I think it's certainly worth highlighting that to prospective insurers when you're putting your renewal package together with your insurance broker, putting your submission together to put into the marketplace, right? It's worth highlighting those types of achievements, because like Dave kind of alluded to, I mean, if you're keeping your workers safe, there's a good chance you're also going to keep the public safe and the property around your work site safe. And those are really the drivers for casualty insurance. So I certainly think it's worth highlighting those aspects of your operation. But having said that, I don't think insurers put a lot of weight into that in their rating schemes. But like I said, it's certainly worth pointing out where you sit and where you stand, especially if those numbers are very attractive and you're best in class.
Yeah, and you're starting by. Go ahead,
David. Chris.
So you're starting by developing a culture within your company that says, we have pride in health and safety, and that has a lot of indirect impacts that are positive for your company. That if people aren't happy, if people kind of show up day to day and they're getting hurt and they don't want to be there, then you're probably going to have other claims that come up, and that's going to affect your insurance as well down the line. So it's not really a direct impact, but I'd say like it's a huge indirect impact.
Yeah, Jim, I was just going to add that Chris mentioned that we've got a lot of data and it's kind of like gold in the ground. We want to try and get that gold out of the ground more and extracted for the benefit of not only our clients, but the industry as a whole. And, I would love to, it's not profitable for us to do this, but I'd love to do that analysis. I'd love to say, okay, let's correlate workers' compensation ratings, right, against loss history, right? And let's, and I got another one I'd love to do. I'd love to do one where we take the data and the loss data and we correlate it against project delivery model, right? Design, bid, build, design, build, design, build, P3, just kind of to just see where is there a correlation. I think because that's the data that we can then take to the insurers and say, hey, this is material. Look at how high the correlation is, right? And just like a safe, not only safety, but a clean job site, is also, if we had a metric for clean job site and using it, this is there's a technology discussion here, but there's a data piece to this discussion. And the data piece, I think, is getting easier and easier for us to do because a lot of the technology is allowing us to harness the power of that data much more quickly. And those are some of the paths that we'd love to go down the road on.
Yeah, at this point, like we don't know what we don't know. And, as we kind of collect data and do these exercises to say, okay, this is connecting with this, and we start thinking about, okay, predictive job sites and predicting risks that may or may not happen in the future. But in the meantime, like we're saying, okay, if you are going to be safe and your workers are happy, then maybe, your loss ratios go down in a certain segment. So
Everything you guys are doing is backboned by data. What can you suggest to general contractors, perhaps, in what data we should start adapting or adopting to start doing our own analytics and internal review that we can start pitching to you guys when we come either for a project-specific insurance policy or aggregate?
Yep. I think I really think that the emergence of a chief data officer at the construction company is it's already happening. We've seen some of the big companies develop one, but I think the best first thing that a contractor can do is come up with a strategy to collect their near miss, incident, and claims data, right? Things that have gone wrong on the job or could have gone wrong on the job, right? And then once you've got that data, you can start quantifying what are your biggest risks. So when you capture that information, what's the root cause of those near misses or those incidents? And once you've categorized what your biggest risks are, then you can start solving problems with those risks, and you can calculate your own mitigation delta, right? You can say, hey, has our incidents and near misses and claims gone down as a result of implementing this risk control? And the beauty of the model is if you keep collecting that data, you're going to be able to give your own sense of continuous improvement. You're going to be like, hey, we've totally nailed that worker injury risk and it's gone. We've used a combination of better operational practices. We got a couple of wearables that we're using. We're using a computer vision technology. It seems to be working really well because it's going to allow you to tweak the different risk controls you're using. And then ultimately that data just feeds into the discussions you have with your insurers and your financiers and even your owner clients. You say, hey, we're a good contractor. We can show you with our data. So I think really beginning the journey, capturing what's going wrong in the company is probably the best first step.
And one of the, on hand, one of the things you can use to really kind of get to the heart of that is your own claims information, right? I think, there's too many times when you get caught up in the number, right? It's a $46,000 loss and it's going to impact our renewal by X percent. But, really looking at what happened as a part of that loss and then what was the root cause of that loss, right? If you're looking, maybe it comes down to the way you're screening drivers, or maybe it comes down to the way you're, looking at your operations on site, but getting to the root cause and not just the outcome, but how did that outcome come about? So mining your own, company's claims information and drilling down and really digging deep on the incidents, the frequency of the incidents and the severity of the incidents can give you some insight into your operation. It even goes to, talking to your field guys, talking to individuals throughout your organization to get an idea of the whys and hows incidents happen, may give you a little bit of insight into how to improve those. And there are probably some data-driven strategies that can help on an implementation to improve those scenarios.
And it's not an easy kind of shift in gears, right? To think about all this stuff. You almost need a guy like from Moneyball, like a Billy Bean to think, okay, I see the data all around me, or like the Matrix, I see everything numbers, ones and zeros, and they have to kind of think about how are they going to use that data or what they need to collect. A lot of people might just see a construction site and say, this is how we've always done it. This is what I know is best, but you don't necessarily know if you're doing things the best way because it kind of gets passed down from generation to generation. As we move into the whole kind of digitized environment, you'll start to learn things that you thought would be surprising for you. simple things like using an angle grinder the wrong way, or holding something wrong, or bending over too far from a ladder. Like that's all little bits of information that you can kind of collect on your job site and say, well, you shouldn't really be doing that, or you should be doing this a different way.
So it just to build on this whole idea, with data, you may be doing 20, 30, 50 million, $100 million a year in sales, right? You may not be able to get enough data. And this is where there's an emergence of these data alliances or data trusts within the construction industry. So down in the US, a few of the larger contractors have gotten together and created the Predictive Analytics Strategic Council, which takes a lot of the safety data. And the reason they're doing that is because they have 10 companies that have a massive amount of data, whereas individually they wouldn't get the insights that they could now get as having 10 companies. In the UK, they've created the Construction Data Trust, which is about, I think, 7 or 8 companies that have come together. So we see that trend continuing to grow so that, like Chris said, you can have a larger aggregation of data. You can see the frequency and severity more clearly, right? With data, the more you have, the better. And ultimately, you can all use that data in order to improve the risk issues you're facing. So that's a whole other discussion, but it definitely relates to the tech space very much.
The advancement of technology in the construction industry, let alone just in the past 5 years, has been incredible. Where do you guys see the baseline going of technology adaptation in construction and its impact on insurance in, say, 5 years and 10 years from now? Where do you see us?
I've luckily I get to go around the world, like I said, and hear what people are working on. And really, the innovation part of my job is not really coming up with the ideas. It's just taking ideas from different parts of the world and presenting them to new parts of the world. But one trend that continues to appear is the bringing together of all these different parts of the construction project. Like the silos that we have in construction are sometimes our biggest enemy. And so the whole idea of bringing the BIM together with the schedule data, together with IoT data, together with operational phase data, right? And all the data you collect from your project management systems and your accounting systems and the insurance industry data. What it looks like is happening is that there's this single federated digital platform forming within the construction space that's going to allow for better data continuity from the design phase to the construction phase to the operations phase. And obviously, the more data you have around the project at whatever phase you're in, I think the better position you're going to be to make better decisions, right? And as Chris said, as humans, we make these decisions like intuitive decisions. I think there's a behavioral psychologist called Daniel Kahneman. You haven't read his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He basically walks you through system 1 decisions, which are intuitive decisions, and then there's system 2 decisions, which are ones where you do more analysis. Well, I think in the future, you're going to be able to do that analysis much quicker. So it's almost like you're making a system 1 decision, like a gut decision, but it's going to be founded on data. And that's why if you have all these access points to that data and you have machine learning capability to aggregate it in a very fast manner, your decisions can be quick, but they can actually be done very effectively. So you know you're making a good decision. And that's really, I think, the biggest part of this technology as it all comes together. And of course, if the construction industry is making better decisions, the insurance industry is going to see it in their losses. That's a simple connection. I
think you could also end up seeing some barriers to entry, right? I mean, if you talk about the water damage issue, we've all seen the deductibles on water damage rise over the past years. The rates have risen in conjunction with that. But I think, if you're looking at the 5-year, 10-year window, as that data becomes more refined and companies are able to say that if water mitigation technology is put on a job site, the claims history is going to improve to Y, then they're going to say, you need to have this on your job site for us to insure you. So I could see a level of that kind of creeping in as that data becomes more refined, and it becomes, if you can take that risk profile out of a job through technology, insurers are going to want to go down that road, because those are the types of losses that can really get sizable, right?
I think, when I think about the future, it's, so David, Sean, and I, we've been fighting for this. Like it's been an uphill battle, changing the industry, make it more digitized, make smarter decisions. But I think as we kind of go down the years, there's not going to be an aha moment that says this is new and this is what we're doing, and everything kind of changes. I think if we look back 10 years from now, we're just going to say, why weren't we doing this? Because it just makes complete sense. And we're going to look back and say, that was kind of a very old-fashioned way of doing things. And we should have started doing this a lot sooner.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can understand construction is, it's a game of unknown unknowns, right? And I mean, you're going, and that's why it makes total sense the construction industry might be one of the laggards in adopting technology, because it's not like a manufacturing company that, hey, I make a Sony television. Here's how I do it, right? If you ask a contractor that, they're like, well, I sometimes make buildings, I sometimes make bridges, I sometimes make the building over here where the geotechnical risk is high, or it's over here where it's not. Oh, and by the way, this has a lot of weather issues. It's like, so, but now I think the technology is getting to the point where you can scale this up regardless of the amount of unknown unknowns that you see in the construction industry. So
it sounds to me like the general consensus of the core takeaway here is that technology in construction is coming. And both the Ontario General Contractors Association and Aon are here to support our members in the adaptation of technology, whether you are a small general contractor or a mega contractor. There are the resources out there that can get you up and running. And the tech assessment panel that Aon runs, as well as the innovation committee from the OGCA, are both here to support you and kind of lead the charge on your behalf. So make sure you're reading the general in the innovation corner, that you're connecting and staying in touch with the OGCA on our alignment with Aon and their tech assessment panel. And feel free to reach out to any of these gentlemen if you have any questions specifically for your organization and how technology impacts your insurance situation. So with that, gentlemen, thank you very much for your contributions today. I think it was a great session. And with that, I think we will wrap up.
Yeah, Jim, I just want to say it's been great working with you in the OGC, and also Eric, who's been kind of a crucial part in kind of helping us bring together two different companies and, keep pushing the path forward.
yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Giovanni. Really, really happy to help, and look forward to helping you in the future and the members.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.